Indian smartphone maker Karbonn has been active in India for a really long time now. It has been quite aggressive in the budget segment, so much so that none of its devices is priced over 14,000 rupees. Sticking to its strategy, Karbonn has launched the K9 Kavach 4G and the Aura Note 2. Now these two devices are similarly priced and their hardware is similar. Now we put these two devices to the test to see how they fare against their competition.
The K9 Kavach is the smaller of the two and sports a 5-inch display with a resolution of 720 by 1280 pixels. It has capacitive navigation buttons, but they aren't backlit, which might be an issue when using the phone in the dark. The K9 Kavach display is pixel dense at 293 ppi and has got good viewing angles. Sunlight legibility isn't all that great and we had a hard time when outdoors. The phone is made of plastic and the back cover is removable. Under it is a removable 2300 mAh battery. The K9 Kavach is a dual SIM phone and has two micro SIM slots plus a dedicated micro SD card slot that can accept cards up to 32 GB. While the memory card is hot swappable, the micro SIMs will need you to pull the battery out. This phone has a 5 megapixel camera with a dual LED flash and a fingerprint sensor on the back. At the front, there's a 5 megapixel selfie camera along with a selfie flash. The K9 Kavach is powered by a quad-core MediaTek MT6737 processor clocked at 1.25 GHz and has 1 GB of RAM. There's 8 GB of internal storage, out of which we had less than 4 GB at our disposal. On the other hand, the Aura Note 2 has a 5.5-inch HD display with backlit capacitive touch buttons. We didn't find the display on this phone as good as that of the K9 Kavach. Colors weren't as accurate and viewing angles were strictly average. The back cover is quite thin and considerable force is needed to unlatch it from the back of the phone. It also flexes and feels like it might crack if excessive force is applied. Under this cover is the 2900 mAh battery along with a dual SIM and micro SD card slots. The Aura Note 2 is available in 3 colors, blue, coffee and black, and all 3 have a champagne colored mid-frame. There's a 13 megapixel camera at the back with a tiny single LED flash. At the front, there's a 5 megapixel camera just like the K9 Kavach except there's no selfie flash. The Aura Note 2 has the same MediaTek 6737 processor clocked at 1.25 GHz, but there's 2 GB of RAM and 16 GB of storage available here. You can also add a micro SD card for up to 32 GB of more space. Karbonn ships both phones with Android 7.0 Nougat. Both phones have a stock Android-like interface with very minor changes in the settings menu. You get MediaTek's MiraVision technology which lets you tweak display options to suit your taste. As these two devices are targeted at different audiences, they have different pre-installed apps. The K9 Kavach's most notable feature is that it comes with the Government of India's Bheem app, which can be used to send and receive money. Karbonn also lets you lock apps on this phone with your fingerprint.
The performance of the K9 Kavach 4G is just about right for a phone at this price. The 1 GB of RAM does feel like a bottleneck when multitasking, and the phone kills a lot of apps in the background quite often.
We found that there was only 300 MB of RAM free on average, which is not ideal. If you are planning to play games, then be prepared for long load times as apps in the memory need to be cleared. The K9 Kavach managed to last only 6 hours and 43 minutes in our HD video loop test, and we found this battery performance to be subpar as it struggled to go on for one day with low to medium use. While the Aura Note 2 has the same processor as the K9 Kavach, it gets 2 GB of RAM which helps it manage applications better. We found that the device had close to 500 MB free on average. The bigger battery helped this phone last 8 hours and 1 minute in our HD video loop test.
Despite the bigger battery, the phone still couldn't last beyond one day with light to medium use. We also noticed that the backlight for the capacitive touch buttons is on pretty much all the time, which is not good for the battery life.
The Karbonn K9 Kavach and the Aura Note 2 have different cameras. The K9 has a 5 megapixel primary camera and the output is just about average. The phone does take some time to adjust metering and photos turned out to be overexposed or underexposed when we tried to capture them quickly. Objects at a distance have decent amounts of detail, but we did find a bit of purple fringing when shooting subjects against the light. Macros appeared flat with no separation between the subject and the background. The phone can do 720p video recording with the rear camera, while the front camera can only manage 480p. The 5 megapixel selfie camera takes average photos that can be shared on social media apps but lack detail. We found the selfie flash to be useful in low lit areas. The Aura Note 2 has a 13 megapixel camera, but if you are expecting that this will result in much better photos, then you will be disappointed. Photos we took from this phone lacked contrast, appeared dull, and had colors that were off the mark. It can get frustrating to try using this camera in low light as it struggles to focus. Selfies turned out to be decent even though we had to stay still a little longer than usual to get blur-free photos. These two smartphones are focused at different audiences but are within the same price range. The K9 Kavach is priced a little lower than the Aura Note 2 and gets the basics right. It sports a fingerprint sensor that works well and helps keep data secure. However, it is low on RAM and storage and you can't really do much beyond the basics. Also, battery life isn't great and you will need to keep the charger handy. The Aura Note 2 on the other hand is priced higher and has a bigger display and battery. However, we weren't impressed with the performance of either. For the price you would pay, you could also get hold of a Redmi 4 or spend a little extra and buy the Moto E4 Plus.
For all things tech, do log on to gadgets360.com.